Today we're going to talk to Chris Hart from Investment Solutions. Welcome, Chris.
Yeah, hello.
Let's start off with MTN's results. Firstly, are you impressed?
I think MTN's results were good. I think this has really become an iconic South African firm. If one beds it down, they've actually achieved quite a few things in their overall results. Firstly, they've achieved quite strong growth in subscribers. And one of the questions is this a company going ex-growth or not? The answer is doesn't appear to be. The subscriber base has gone up, I think, about 16%. The EBITDA margin up about just a little bit more than 2%, and then your headline earnings per share up more than 40%, and that's, I think, a fairly good result. So not only are they achieving growth, they're also now starting to achieve strong earnings with dividends, and that dividend payout ratio has increased, I think, just short of R5 a share on the dividends, R4, I can't remember the exact number, but the point is that this looks like an increasingly solid company. You can buy it for both growth and dividends, going forward. There are risks to it. I think Nigeria, I'm not worried about. Nigeria, I think, is still an excellent market. There's a bit of unrest there, but I don't think it's systemic and fundamental to MTN's problem. It's Iran that's the problem, because Iran is increasingly being isolated, and the question is, do we see sanctions that would inhibit MTN's ability to actually extract profits, etc., with an increasingly isolated regime? Do we see a war, for instance? That will not be great for MTN.
Yeah, maybe let's hope if it does happen, the towers survive at least. Sasfin. Not exactly the greatest set of numbers, are they?
No, Sasfin, I didn't think were so exciting. Look, their earnings were up to 300 million, up from 270 or so, but their earnings per share basically flat at 160, just a little bit north of 160 cents a share. In other words, no growth there at shareholder level, and I think it does reflect the difficulties in the banking sector. I like the second-tier banking sector more than I do the big four, as it were, from an investment point of view. But Sasfin, I would have liked to have seen more growth. We're seeing more growth out of other companies like Able and Capitec. This didn't reflect the growth, and it's a nice little operation. It's not as if that it's that there's major problems, but it would have been nice to see some growth on there.
Maybe they were too conservative in their risk approach? It
may be the case, and that's not necessarily a bad thing given the circumstances that we face. But I think the economy is now getting up to 3% growth, etc. One would expect Sasfin to actually be able to achieve a little bit more growth than they did.
Something very interesting, Marafi's CEO, these guys export chrome. They've just asked the government to slap tariffs on their own product.
Sure. It's an odd request, and I can't quite work out why they would want to do that, because the moment you're putting export tariffs on your product, what happens is that your top line revenue gets reduced, okay, and then of course you've got policy uncertainty. In other words, an export tariff, what next for the mining industry? It's not as if that, and there's so many uncertainties in terms of policy. Do you want to actually add another policy uncertainty to the mix? Because what then happens with an export tax, or chatter about export tax, it raises the uncertainty, so that from a mining investment point of view, you're raising the hurdle rate at which you'd make an investment because of those regulatory uncertainties, and then you're squeezing the top line revenue with the possibility of an export tax. It means that the possibility of growth in the mining sector becomes even more constrained. So it's, but I think when one looks at the sentiment, if one's not looking at it from just Marafi's point of view, obviously beneficiations is quite an important issue, but we need to not look at the mines to understand why it's more profitable to beneficiate chrome or outside the country. We actually need to look at the conditions, at how do you actually convert that chrome ore into something more useful in South Africa? Why are we not competitive there?
Yeah.
Because remember, mining is a different operation to a manufacturing operation, which is what beneficiation actually is.
I'm sure it'll all become clear over time. Lastly, the resources story.
Yeah.
Chinese GDP revisions put a bit of a spanner in the works in that sector.
Sure.
But surely this is the opportunity to buy.
It could be. One needs. China is a bit of an uncertain wild card in this resources story, because is it slowing down to a point where you're not going to get growth? Now, I think what's not going to happen is that you're going to see a decline in demand for the moment.
Yeah.
Okay. But do you get that growth? And can it absorb the supply coming into the market at the prices that we are seeing on the global stage? That's the difficulty that one really has to play around with this. The Chinese growth story may well be plateauing. But there are other emerging markets like India, Indonesia, etc., that are also coming through, that are going to need enormous amount of expenditure and investment into infrastructure.
Thank you for your time. There you go, Devon. Look beyond China, perhaps, and do some maths and see what the others are buying.
Well, thanks very much, Gunter, there at the JSE. In fact, we will be talking to Gunter a little later, getting some perspective from Chris Hart once again on labour brokering. Now, more details coming up after the break.